I am going to try to get this intro shot before the sun goes down anymore. I do not have a lot of time. Let's get started. We've done so many videos on XLR microphones on this channel because there's always a new microphone coming out. There's always new features on them because they're all digital, and they've gotten so good lately that there's not a huge advantage to going with an XLR system over it. However, there are still advantages. And we haven't done too many videos on those advantages until today, because the main advantage you get with an XLR setup is control. For example, if you want a USB microphone, there are generally maybe fewer than 10 that you can choose from. And of those 10, maybe 5 of them are good. And of those 5, if you want something that has volume control and options like an XLR setup, you have one option. You have the Elgato Wave. It's literally the only one with multi-channel support. If you want a good USB microphone with solid control, that's it. That's the only one. You have to get that one. However, with XLR microphones, not only do you have multiple interfaces to choose from that all have a level of control higher than a USB mic, but then you can also choose to plug in any XLR mic you want. The possibilities and combinations are virtually endless. So we've got 4 of the most common devices. I'd say 2 of the most common devices that are currently being used. The GoXLR and the Scarlett Solo are the 2 I see just about everybody on Twitch use. And then 2 newcomers that are genuine competitors to the scene and actually bring something new to the streaming environment. So we're gonna take a look at these 4 interfaces, and do I have to say it? I'll say it. Look, if you don't know what an audio interface is, if you have an XLR microphone and needs to plug into something, it goes into this XLR microphone right here. This device has a preamp built into it to give it that gain that it needs. It also has the converters to make it digital, so it can connect to your device, and it gives you all the control, the gain knobs, all the things that you need. You don't need these with a USB microphone. This is an XLR interface for XLR microphones. We have the GoXLR Mini, which is $250. We could have brought the full-on GoXLR, but if you want my opinion, first of all, they're gonna sound the same, so the test is gonna be exactly the same, but also, this is just a better bang for your buck. This is half the cost of a full GoXLR, and it does 90% of what the GoXLR does. We have the Focusrite Scarlett Solo, which is the absolute classic. I just got on Amazon for $120, so it's by far the budget option. We have the Wave XLR, another decently budgeted device from Elgato for $159, which essentially turns any XLR microphone into an Elgato Wave mic. And then we have the AVerMedia live streamer Nexus, which I did a full review on. Actually, I've done full reviews on everyone here except for the Focusrite. It retails for $350. I love so much of what they've done with this, but I was so disappointed with half the other stuff. We'll have to take a look and see what they've updated on this thing since I've done my review. Any reviews I've done on this, if you're more interested in details, will be down below. We're gonna be judging these 4 devices in 3 different categories. We're gonna talk about sound quality, we're gonna talk about functionality, things that each one can actually do, whether that's talking about their I/O, whether they can handle plugins, how much audio control they have over your devices. Is probably the most important category to me. And then lastly, the intuitiveness of the device, because you can have all the controls in the world on a device, but if it is difficult for you to use on the fly, it amounts to nothing. So how are we doing on lights? I think we're still killing it. Sam, is this difficult to color correct? I think we got it. Let's get started. All right, so how are we gonna do this? Well, I set up one of my favorite dynamic microphones, the Shure MV7, and plugged it into all 4 interfaces to record 2 different tests. First was just saying a normal sentence, then taking a listen to it on both my studio monitors, my Yamaha HS80s, and a nice pair of headphones. And it's important you guys know before I judge these things, this area is going to be the least important area of this entire test. You'll see why with the second test. But it was very difficult to hear a difference between these devices. In fact, I couldn't really hear it on my monitors. I could hear it a little bit on my headphones. Let me play them for you real quick. I can guarantee you won't hear a difference unless you're wearing headphones. So pop those on real quick. This is the AVerMedia live streamer Nexus. I'm sitting here to tell you that StreamBeats is the best music you can use on your live streams. That is all. This is the Focusrite Scarlett Solo. And if you're wondering, is Harris going to shamelessly plug StreamBeats this entire audio test? Oh yeah, bud. This is an audio test of the Elgato Wave XLR, which I'm going to use to tell you that we just dropped a huge collaborative album release with 100 Thieves called Hype Tracks. You should check it out. It's 90 tracks, awesome high energy stuff for your gameplay. This is an audio test of the GoXLR Mini, and I feel like I should let you know that on none of these devices was there EQ or compression or any plugins turned on. And keep in mind, what you just heard was entirely uncompressed, raw, large files. So even though the Elgato Wave XLR and the GoXLR had a tiny bit more punch to them, maybe a little bit more detail on the high end, like this much, by the time you filter it through all of OBS and Twitch, that change isn't gonna be there. I gave them all very high scores because they will all work on Twitch just fine if sound quality is all you're looking for. So I gave the GoXLR a 10 and the Wave XLR a 9.5. The only reason I took off 0.5 on the Elgato is because you can't add plugins to it like compression and EQ, but Reaper plugins are free and you can add those right into OBS and give it the same effect. So it wasn't really worth taking off a whole point. I gave the Focusrite a 9 entirely because its gain level is a little bit lower. The GoXLR and Wave XLR are able to give up to 75 dB of gain, which is far more than you need for an SM7B. You don't need any kind of Cloudlifter for an SM7B. The Focusrite is gonna struggle a little bit with only 56 dB of gain, where the SM7B generally needs 60. I mean, that's only 4 dB off. If you cranked up the gain with the SM7B, you'd be just fine, but it's not gonna have quite as much punch as you'd like on that microphone. And that lack of gain is the main reason why the GoXLR and Wave XLR, I think, had a little bit more brightness and detail to it. The Nexus I gave an 8, just because it had about the same quality as the Focusrite, but for some reason, when I was monitoring my microphone, there was a hiss in it the whole time. And I tried to figure out where it was coming from, and I'm completely lost because it didn't show up in the recording at all. And when I turned microphone monitoring out of my headphones, the hiss went away. So you'd think it was coming from the microphone, but it's not because it doesn't show up in the recording, but you can get rid of it with the noise gate, but the noise gate doesn't work very well. I was very confused. Anyway, the Nexus overall will still sound great on stream, but it only has 42 dB of gain, which I'm very confused about because in the software you can actually drag it up to 60, but I know it only has 42 dB. I don't know what's going on over here. Either way, if you're just looking for good mic quality, the Nexus will sound fine. Just make sure you don't use a microphone that requires a little bit too much gain. But the second recording I did, which I'll show you, maybe just 2 of them. I'll show you the Focusrite and the Wave XLR. And I did this to show you that if you've got OBS encoding and Twitch compression and sounds going on behind your voice, there is literally no way anyone is going to hear a difference in sound quality between different interfaces. This is a Twitch audio test with the Elgato Wave XLR, and this is what I would sound like if I were playing a game while streaming and my voice was being played over gameplay sound. And this is what I would sound like if I were doing a just chatting stream and I had music playing in the background behind my voice. This is a Twitch stream audio test of what I would sound like in front of some gameplay sound. And this is what I would sound like if I were doing a just chatting stream in front of music. So let's get into the more important things. Let's talk about functionality with each of these. Now, I'm gonna give them a score based on how I feel about the features of each of these, but I'm gonna go into detail about what they have and what they're missing because every streamer has different needs. Some of you are on single PC setups, some of you are on dual PC setups. So while one device might work really well for one person, another one might work even better for a different person. Let's jump into it. And let's start with the Focusrite Scarlett Solo, just because it's the easiest. This one gets a 2. And not because I dislike the product, it's just, it's got one function. You plug a microphone in, and then you plug this into a computer. That's all it can do. This device is not designed for streamers. In fact, it's the only one here that's not designed for streamers. It even says on the box, the perfect audio interface for a singer-songwriter. And I think I totally agree. In fact, I gave it a 2 instead of a 1 because it's got this little air button that boosts up the high end to give it a little bit more clarity, which is kind of nice, but that's about it. Anyway, this is a pretty easy one. This is why when people ask me about it, I say it's great, but it's just not built for streamers. There's no multi-channel support, there's no plugins, all those things that streamers need, it just doesn't exist. In fact, I didn't even need any software to record on it because it just picks up in my interface like a USB microphone. Let's go to the classic next. Let's go to the GoXLR Mini. This thing brought a lot of features that no other device had. This was really the first dedicated audio interface for streamers, and it was mind-blowing at the time, but there are more devices now, and this thing is kind of fallen behind. It was the first device with multi-channel support where you could control your microphone, your teammates, your gameplay, all the different things, even your headphones, your music, whatever, all on completely different faders, and it was totally programmable with a pretty incredible software. It's got a line in and line out for a second PC on the back, as well as an optical input for console gameplay. They completely changed the game for what streamers expected out of audio devices, but nowadays they're missing things that every new device has. They're missing things like submixes, meaning if I want to hear my teammates at a slightly lower volume than my stream does, I can't do that on here. It's also pretty poor utilization of space. This is a chunky device, especially the full-size GoXLR takes up a massive amount of space on the desk, but because everything is hardware, nothing's programmable, it kind of does very little. It does what it does, and it does it very well. I mean, the audio routing table is mind-blowing, and no one else has done anything like that yet. But because it's fallen behind, and because the GoXLR team has all left TC Helicon, the makers of the device, it hasn't been updated in a couple years, and it's probably not ever going to be updated again, so I'm going to give it a 7. Truth be said, I'm probably still going to use it at my next setup. I'll probably use the Mini. I like its size, and I haven't really used the voice changer and the sampler in a couple months, so we'll see. But yeah, solid 7. Let's move on to the Nexus. I was so pumped about this device. This thing is so full of features that I'd wanted for my GoXLR for so long. It's got most of the same functionality as the GoXLR with multi-channel support, etc., but they moved everything over to knobs instead of faders because it takes up so much less space. You can do so much more with the real estate when you don't have a fader taking up the entire face. So because they switched over to knobs, not only can you have 6 on here instead of just 4 like the GoXLR, but you also have a whole touch screen over here that you can program exactly like a Stream Deck. And then of course they've got 4 soft buttons over here because sometimes you want to hit a button without really having to look at it and pay attention. They added things that the GoXLR was missing, like submixes, which made me very excited. Essentially, this thing, when you're looking at the features, checks just about every one of my boxes. So in terms of functionality, I give this one a 10. But before you go out and buy it, I am gonna have you wait until we get to the next category because that will that will change some things. Now let's get to the Wave XLR. This is the newest addition to the lineup, released earlier this month, or I guess last month now that it's August. And it's Elgato's classic simple interface, very much software controlled. And essentially what it does is it turns any XLR microphone into the same exact functionality as their Wave USB microphones. You have the same single button that you can click 3 times to go between the different controls, whether it be microphone volume, headphone volume, or the blend knob. You have a capacitive mute button on the top that when you hit turns all the lights red so you know that it was hit. And then it plugs into Elgato's Wavelink software, which is very simple but also very great. The software has multiple outputs and submixes so you can have different volume levels going to your headphones versus going to your stream. It's got enough gain for any microphone. You can add up to 9 different channels that you can individually control with your Stream Deck. And you can take off the faceplate here in case you feel like going the extra mile and really redesigning your device. Throw your logo on it, make your desk a little bit more personal. Nobody hates extra customization, but it is missing things, most notably I/O. All it's got is USB, XLR, and a headphone jack on the back. In fact, let me give you a close-up on that. So using this on a 2 PC setup is really gonna require you to use voice meter, go out of one PC into another PC. I've set it up before. It's not super clean, but it's doable. Right now, it really lacks a good control interface, whereas the GoXLR and the Livestreamer Nexus use faders or knobs, which make volume control really easy. Anything other than your main controls like your headphone volume require you to either use your PC using your mouse or Stream Deck buttons, which volume control using buttons is not the greatest experience. And then of course, unlike these two, it's missing plugin support. So currently you don't have any compression, EQ, noise gate, those things that generally you want. I didn't take off too many points for that because you can use Reaper plugins, which are totally free, easy to use. You throw them right in OBS and they work just fine. But I did give this an 8 because of the things it was missing. Of course, if you're on a single PC setup and you don't mind using Stream Deck buttons, this thing's awesome. Which is why I mentioned that depending on your setup, one might score higher for you than it did for me. But let's get into the last category, which is intuitiveness, which I view as kind of like a multiplier for functionality. For example, the Focusrite Scarlett gets a 9 for intuitiveness because it does so little that it's very easy to control what it does. You've got a gain knob for controlling the microphone gain and a volume knob for controlling your headphone volume. I don't know what else you want. In fact, the only reason I gave it a 9 instead of a 10 is because it doesn't have a great way to properly meter your voice. It just lights up green, yellow, and red. And it flashes pretty fast, so it's kind of hard to tell if you set your gain properly. But other than that, for what little it does, it's very easy to do it. It doesn't give it a lot of good functionality. It just means that for what it does, it's very easy to control. The GoXLR, even though it was lacking on some features, the amount of control and intuitiveness of those features is incredible. So I gave it a 9. There are times in the software where the tabs get a little bit clunky and a little bit overwhelming because it can do so much. But the fact that they've given you so much control, and I was able to figure it out just by looking at it for the first time, is pretty incredible. The Nexus, however, even though it got a 10 on functionality, I gave it a 2 on intuitiveness, because the thing that destroys this device is the software. They added every feature I wanted into this thing, but the way you control it and the way the software works is an absolute nightmare. Take, for example, submixes. If you look at submixes on the Wave XLR, they're placed right next to each other. You have your fader for your teammate volume in your headphones, and you have the fader for your teammate volume going to the stream. You set them to what volumes you want, and then you lock them together with an offset lock. This way, if you die in game and you want to talk to chat and turn down your teammates, you pull down one fader, it pulls them both down the exact same amount. It just makes a lot of sense, and of course it does. That was my idea. I'm gonna say that in every single video I bring it up. In the Nexus software, however, you have your broadcast mix entirely separate from your headphone mix. So I'd have to go and turn down my teammate volume in my broadcast and then separately turn it down for my stream. And then when I wanna bring the volume back up, I have to try to remember what they were both at and bring them both back up to where they are, because I can't tell what the stream is hearing if I'm using two separate mixes. And if I wanna do it on the device itself, I have to turn down the knob, click to go to the other mix, then turn down the knob again and do the exact same thing when I turn it back up. I mean, in my opinion, this actually makes submixes completely useless. And then on top of that, the software itself is just very slow to be responsive. It's very buggy. You can see the gain meter refreshes itself like 2 or 3 frames per second, and it's like a half a second behind, so it's impossible to really meter yourself. It's an excellent device, almost made completely useless by its poor execution. But onto the Wave XLR, kind of like I showed you earlier with the submixes, I give it a 9. It's very easy to use, very intuitive. Everything just really makes sense. Setting up a microphone is super easy. Using it while you're streaming is super easy. The only reason it doesn't get a 10 is for a lack of knobs or faders. But in my opinion, this is how the control of a modern device should look. It's simple, it's small, it fits on your desk, it's very easy to use. So even though the Streamer Nexus had the highest score in terms of functionality, the GoXLR Mini and the Wave XLR are definitely my 2 favorite audio interfaces, and which one you use really depends on what you want. Do you need the extra I/O or need to be able to plug into 2 PCs? Are you okay with using buttons or maybe something like a PC panel to control a smaller device like this? Or maybe most importantly, hitting the like button to help out this video in YouTube's algorithm is showing me that this helped out a little bit. So let me know down below, did this help you at all? Was there a feature that maybe I missed? Maybe a device that I missed? If I can be real with you, I actually planned on also bringing the Yamaha MG10XU into this because it used to be a more popular one. You don't see too many people using it anymore, but I used to use it. But unfortunately in the move, my wife got a little bit Facebook Marketplace happy and sold off some of those things. You never sell old gear. This is why YouTubers never sell off old gear. You always end up needing it in a future video. Guys, hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet. If you want to chat more about this in a live setting, I stream on my personal YouTube channel. Link to that in the description down below. I stream every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. I love you guys. I'll see you around. Have a good one. Peace. Oh, and happy streaming. You know the drill.